Hey guys, Matthew here, and welcome to update number 4 of the Zero Hero Challenge, and also this is going to be the final update. So before I go about talking about what we did for the video and all that, for the series, I'll go ahead and say right away, we do not have a physical mirror. Now the reason why we do not have a physical mirror is because I didn't want to wait until sales happen to make the final video, because who knows, maybe the items are going to sell later today, maybe tomorrow, probably within the next 48 hours, and I didn't want you guys to have to wait a full 2 days just for me to be done with the series, because I actually have a mirror. So we have, as you can see here, about 100 exalt worth of items around over here. We have 200 pure exalts. We also have a bunch of seeds, a bunch of crafts left as well. Well, not that many, but some crafts left as well, amongst some other things that hold some amount of value. So I did the quick math earlier, and we are at about 330 or 340 exalt worth of currency. But a mirror is worth 275 or so. So basically, with an even just 2 of these sales, any 2 of these sales, I would be done with the challenge and be able to buy an actual physical mirror, which is why I figured there's no reason to wait 2 days. I'm sure we can all agree that I basically am done. I'm actually 50 exalt over what was the challenge required. So I decided to make the video now so I could tell you guys what I crafted and how to craft those things, instead of making you guys wait an extra 2 days for no reason. So let's get right into it. So today would technically be day number 6 of the challenge, but since I have not done anything to generate currency today, basically the challenge finished yesterday. So the challenge finished yesterday, and it took us 5 days to actually get to the point where we got our mirror worth of currency, that is, or net worth, from absolutely nothing, from scratch. Obviously, in the series, I did keep my characters and my garden, but that's it. I had no seeds, no crafts, no currency at all. I had to start with quarry farming, actually, because I was so poor. So it took us a whole 5 days. Now let's talk about something, though. Actually, technically, it should have taken us another day, negatively, if that will. It should have taken 4 days. So what happened is 2 days ago, I tried to craft one of these staffs. 2 days ago, we already had enough currency to finish the challenge. Or we were very, very close. And for some odd reason, I thought it would be smart to try to craft one of these. So now this is one of the most expensive craft that you can make right now, and it's worth about 150x. I actually made one yesterday aside from the challenge currency, so from my actual currency tab, and it sold for 140x within 2 or 3 hours. So it sold very, very quickly. So they're worth about 130 to 150x. Depends on the time, depends on if you have the 6 white sockets and all that stuff. Depends if it's well divined, whatever. So I thought it was a good idea, and we ended up wasting 50 exalt of different crafts and stuff, and also for the base. So we ended up losing essentially almost every bit of profit that we had made up to that point on that day. So we basically set ourselves back a whole day. So after that, yesterday came around, and yesterday we made a lot of crafts that were very, very profitable, and this is what I'll be talking about today, as well as some of the crafts that I made on that day 2 days ago that went quite wrong. There was still some pretty profitable crafts that we did make on that day, so let's go ahead and talk about those. So let's go ahead and start off with the first thing that I made, and that is going to be int and deck stacking amulets yesterday. So I made 2 int stacking amulets, and I have 1 of them left, and I made 1 deck stacking amulet, which sold for 40 exalt. The int stacking amulet sold for 50 exalt, and it's actually cheaper to make than the deck stacking one. So clearly int stacking is way more popular right now. It's cheaper and it sells for more, meaning it's basically better in all cases. So let's talk about these amulets. I actually have a video about how to craft these amulets that you can look into. That being said, there is a new strategy that I came up with to make them for cheaper. And that strategy is, now I'll go ahead and explain it like if you guys had seen the video. So if you haven't, you might want to check out the video to know what I'm talking about. But I'll go ahead and take for granted that you guys have watched that video and understood the process of the crafting, so I can go about just what changed instead of the whole process. So you'd go ahead and, of course, you would awaken the attributes alongside the percent int or dex. That would give you these two things. Now you got to make sure you have a removable suffix with the link mechanic. You'll go ahead and remove the suffix and then remove all your prefixes as well after you awaken. Now that will give you basically the attributes and the intelligence alongside nothing else. So at that point, what you would do is basically craft on a random suffix. So you'll want to craft on a suffix, and the goal here is just to block so you can't roll any suffixes, and you will augment attack 3 times. So let me go ahead and explain why we do this real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and over to amulets under jewelry, and I'll show you guys that under attacks, there is no attack prefixes for either the Crusader, Redeemer, or Shaper influence. So if I augment attack on one of these amulets, I'm guaranteed to get non-influenced mods. So I will augment attack 3 times. That's going to give me 3 of these random attack mods. Now afterwards, I'm going to augment caster. So by removing the crafted mod, since I have no open prefixes, the only thing I can roll is going to be either this cast speed roll here, or the damage over time multipliers from either cold or fire. So what I'll do is I'll augment caster, and then I'll reroll caster modifiers, so remove caster, add caster, until I get one of these influence caster modifiers. So I do not want the cast speed modifier. So what this allows me to do is to have 3 attack modifier prefixes that are non-influence, and then 3 suffixes that are influence. So instead of doing suffixes cannot be changed, and then doing remove add influence for the prefix to get the damage per intelligence or damage per dexterity, same thing, same exact thing, I will do remove non-influence modifier and add an influence modifier. When I do this, the only thing that I can hit is prefixes, since I only have 3 non-influence prefixes, and is going to give me some random influence prefixes. Now what's good about this is that every time I do non-influence to influence, whatever mod that it gives me becomes a block, which makes it easier to get the mod that I'm going for, which in this case is increased damage per dexterity or increased damage per intelligence, depending if you're going for the dex stacking or the int stacking. Now you have to remember that these are available on two influences. So Shaper has both dex and int, and Crusader also has int, and Redeemer has dex. So what that means is that it double dips, meaning while it might look like it's a pretty rare mod, it's actually not that rare. It's a 1 in 11 chance to actually get it, if I remember correctly. So by doing non-influence to influence, you can do that 3 times, which is almost a quarter of the required attempts on average. And then if you don't hit it within these 3 times, all you have to do is reforge item keeping suffixes that will keep your 3 influence suffixes and give you some random prefix. Now that prefix might be influenced. That's okay if it's an influence that you can remove. And if it's non-influence, well, you do non-influence to influence. Now, if it does give you an influence prefix, all you have to do is craft on a random prefix, such as, for example, energy shield or life. And then you can do non-influence to influence, and it's going to hit your crafted mod and turn it into an influence mod. So by doing this, instead of having to reroll, remove, add influence, which are like 2 exalt each, 11 times on average, which would cost you like 20 exalt, plus the price to lock in your suffixes, which is 2 exalt, so like 23x, it's going to cost you like 1/3 of that. So these amulets here, now I know this market is probably going to crash after this video, but that's okay. Hopefully mine is sold by then. But these amulets, which have been selling for 45 to 50 to even 60 exalt for the entirety of the league, will actually cost you on average about 15 exalt to make with this new strategy. And that is including the Awakener's Orbing, including rolling the critical multiplier, including everything else. Now, I don't really have to talk about how to go for the pen. So for the int stacking, you would go for pen. All you have to do is remove add lightning modifier until you get pen, and then finish off with ES. And then for the dex stacking one, you would actually do remove add attack and for elemental damage with attack skills after you have your damage per dex. And of course, you get your pen, your cold pen as well through remove add cold, and of course your multi through remove add critical. Now that is basically how you make these 2 amulets with the new strategy, which is much cheaper than what I spoke about in my video that I made like a week ago or so. So that's pretty good that we came up with this strategy here. So that by selling these amulets, I sold one of these for 40x and one of these for 50x. So that is 90 exalt right there, and the total cost for both of them was about 30, meaning I made about a 60 exalt profit on the sale of those two amulets, which is absolutely astronomical. And yes, I'm leaking this strategy in this video, and I did it on stream. So I'm well aware that this might not stay as good as it's been, or at least as good as it was for the duration of this challenge, but it is what it is. My goal is to help you guys out, and obviously to make the crafts as cheap as it can be to the to the people who are buying it. So that was a good bit of currency. Again, I have one of these selling for 45, which I made for 15. I sold another one for 50, which I made for about 15, and one of those sold for 40, which I made for about 15. So big profit there in the whole grand scheme of things. Now, another thing that I made is this pair of boots that you guys can see here. Now, this pair of boots is made by awakening the Redeemer and Hunter pair of boots. Now, it doesn't matter what you awaken, because you're going to end up having to alt spam it anyways. So what you'll do is you'll alt spam projectile pierce 2 additional targets, and then you will do remove add speed until you get like 30 or 35% movement speed. So that is going to give you your speed. This is like pretty much the big part of the cost to the craft is on speed rerolls. Now, once you have the speed rerolls done, you can just put Aspect of the Avian through a craft. You can force on Chaos through remove add Chaos, and Elusive and Tailwind are both forced on through a critical augment, which are 1 exalt each. So the big bulk of this cost of this craft is really the movement speed, which is a 1 in 6 chance to get T1 move speed, so 35 ms. And it's 2 exalt per reroll, so 12 exalts there. And the rest is obviously the Awakener Orb, the bases, the Aspect of the Avian, rerolling the Chaos, and augmenting these critical mods. So these are not like massive amounts of profit, really. I would say they cost about 20 to 25 exalt on average. But if you get unlucky with the movement speed, it's quite likely that you end up making these at a loss, even if they sell for 30 or 35 exalts. So that's that. Now, another thing that I crafted is this amulet that you can see here. And this is an ore stacking amulet. These are ore stacking boots, of course. And this ore stacking amulet here is basically double pen with penetrate elemental, with penetrate cold, mana reserve, multi, vitality, and energy shield. So these amulets are actually incredibly easy to make. I am not sure why people have been selling them for anywhere near these prices. They cost literally less than 10x to make. It's absolutely insane. So fortunately for us, the vitality can be forced on through life rerolls, the multi can be forced on through crit rerolls, and the cold pen can be forced on through cold rerolls. So the only thing that's important here is to get the mana reserved alongside the damage penetrates elemental resistances. And since there's only 2 of these mods, you just awaken them. So you'll awaken the mana reserve alongside the elemental penetration, remove everything else, and then you want to basically take care of your multi first. Once you have your multi on it, since there's no critical suffixes on amulets, so let me go ahead and show you guys amulet critical. There is no critical prefixes. So after you awaken the mana reserved in the pen elemental resistances, you want to take care of the multi. Once that's done, you'll have 2 suffixes, so you can block on the 3rd suffix and put on cannot roll attack mods. By putting on cannot roll attack mods and rolling cold mods, you are going to remove 42,500 weighting to your rerolls. And what you're going for here is going to be this T1 damage penetrates cold, which is a weighting of 250, which in a weighting of a total of like 2,400, 3,400, 4,400, like 5,000-ish. So it's really not that hard to get in terms of cold rerolls. It's like 20 rerolls or something. I'm not exactly sure, but it's really not that bad. Note that you can actually augment cold twice and then remove add cold. So one of these cold mods is actually going to serve as a block if you augment cold twice. So if you augment cold twice, for example, and you get cold damage leashes life and physical is extra cold, then not only are you blocking all of this, because this is cold damage life leech, and this is also cold damage life leech. So this mod here is blocking this mod here as well. This mod here, since it's the same mod pool. And not only that, it's blocking your other mod, which would be physical as extra cold, which is also blocking this mod here, because physical added as cold and physical added as cold are the same mods. So while it takes a lot of rerolls, because you're blocking so many things from auging cold twice and then rerolling cold, getting the cold pen is actually incredibly easy. Once you've done that, you're going to craft on whatever prefix. The idea is just to block it. So you'll craft on, say, energy shield, and then you can reroll life suffixes. And as you can see, life suffixes, there's regen, there's life for each enemy hit by your attacks, and there's life gained on kill, and then there is going to be the vitality skill here. So this is fairly hard. It's a weighting of 800 in a pool of 3,000, 6,000, and 13,000. So there's a decent amount of weighting going on there, but it's about a 1 in 20 life rerolls to get the vitality, and at that point you're basically done. So these probably cost like 15-ish exalt to make, and they sell for, I'm not sure what they sell for. I haven't sold mine yet, but it's up for about 32x, and I wouldn't feel too bad, honestly, going down to 30x if it means selling it quicker, because I still make 10 to 15x profit on average. So pretty good craft there. This was the first time I made one of those though. Now, another thing that I made, and these I actually just sold them. As you can see, I just sold them Phoenix Spark Sorcerer Boots for 22x. I'm sure we can actually see them. Yeah, we can still see them. So this is something that I made actually this morning, kind of like just on a whim. Wanted to see if they sold. So I bought a pair of Elder Sorcerer Boots, and it already had the 30 quality, which is quite nice. And I paid 1 exalt for the base, which is pretty cheap, honestly. And afterwards, I just threw a few enchant fossils until I got something decent. So I think it took like 15, so like 1 exalt worth to get the movement speed roll, which is actually like super bad because it's 6%. And then to get the raised specter alongside the movement speed, you just do bound and shuddering. So fortunately, bound is very, very cheap. It's like 5C each, and shudderings are also super cheap, like also 4 to 5C each. So very cheap, and it's an average of about, I believe, 30 resonators to get the raise alongside the 35 MS. Now, I got intelligence on mine. Unfortunately, it was a pretty low tier, but that doesn't really matter. And then you would reroll ES or reroll defense until you get either T1 flat or T1% and craft on the other one that you're missing. So, for example, I crafted the flat or the percent because I got the flat. And then you would finish it off with like some kind of resistance suffix. So I had fire res, and you're basically done. This pair of boots cost me less than 5x to make, honestly, and it sold for 22, but I got really lucky on it. I actually got the T1 flat ES on the resonator that I used, and the T1 fire res took me 1 augment fire, so I didn't even have to reroll it. So I honestly got really lucky, but I can hardly see these costing more than 10 exalt to make, so you're still doubling your money if they sell for 20 or more. That also even had 35 inch, so if it had, say, another good resistance, like, I don't know, another T1 resistance, maybe it would have sold for 25 or 30. So that is one thing to note as well. Mine were fairly limited by the bad intelligence roll. That being said, if you got like a T1 intelligence roll, that would be pretty dope. So yeah, so that's another craft that I made that gave me like a 15x profit on this craft real quick. And they sold. As you can see, I no longer have them. They're sold for 22x. Another thing that I crafted is one of these scepters here. I did this on stream. I made one of them and it sold for 60 exalt. That being said, since I did it on stream, there was literally none of them listed, and now there's multiple of them listed. So I don't know if I can actually recommend doing this anymore, but it is an Orbot scepter with +1 all spell skill gems with auras from your skills grant damage to you and allies, and a hatred aura effect alongside either +1 lightning, cold, or fire. So it is a scepter that would look something like this. +1 all, +1 lightning, hatred aura effect. Auras from your skills give 2% increased damage, and then the last roll would probably be either trigger socketed spell skill gems. There's also the potential for quality of socketed gems, which is a prefix, and then for the last suffix you would do like apply cold exposure. So like I said, I made only one of them on stream, and it sold for 60x. And it seems like the cheapest one right now is actually 65 on a sandbar scepter. So maybe I'm actually wrong and they still sell fairly well. This is obviously something that you can test out for yourself because they sell for 60 and they cost less than 20 to make. They are very, very cheap to make despite what they sell for. So let me go ahead and explain how they're done real quick. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to get yourself a base. If you intend to make multiple of them, you're probably going to want to have a base that you can easily dupe. So for example, I have this base here, the Magister's Career Scepter with +1 all, 3 white sockets and 30 quality. Now it is a shitty base, and I'm just using because it was given to me. If I was to choose my preferred base, it would probably be a Sandbar Scepter. But I don't really think it matters because Orbots don't really deal damage. So it's not really a weapon made to deal damage yourself. So the implicit is not that big of a deal. So what you're going to do once you have all this, so the level of all spell skill gems, is you are going to augment a fire roll. So you'll put on cannot roll attack modifiers on the bench. And by putting on cannot roll attack modifiers, you're going to remove the odds of getting, say, fire damage flat to attacks. That being said, it doesn't have to be fire. It could also be lightning. It could also be cold. That being said, since we are going to be using some cold some lightning rerolls later, if we want +1 cold, +1 lightning all spell skill gems, and we're going to use cold rerolls for the exposure, the cold exposure, as you can see here, inflict cold exposure, we are pretty much going to want to use fire for the most case. So by doing cannot roll attack modifiers, we're going to augment fire, and the idea is to get fire damage to spells. So once you have the fire damage to spells here, the flat fire damage to spells, and this is going to act as a block. Once you have this, the next thing you want to do is probably augment fire again, and then you're going to want to be going for some suffixes. So say fire resistance and fire damage suffixes, because you want to have no open suffixes. Now at that point, you would have your +1 to all, you would have your fire damage to spells, you would have your fire resistance suffix and your fire damage suffix and your cannot roll attack modifier suffix. So what's opened is now a prefix. So what you'll do is you'll augment lightning. So you have cannot roll attack mod, so this cannot show up. So what can show up? Well, you can get % lightning damage, and you can get +1 to all lightning skills, and then you cannot get this this lightning damage to spells because it's being blocked by the fire damage to spells, and you can also get the lightning damage to extra chaos. On average, when doing so, it is an average of about 11 chaos rerolls to get +1 lightning, which is really, really not that bad. Now, once you have the +1 lightning, you are going to want to start working on suffixes. So the best way to do that is that you'll want to remove these suffixes that you put on here. So you'll want to remove your, say, your fire resistance and your fire damage suffixes. But that being said, you do want to keep your fire damage to spells on it because it counts as a block. So if you do remove, say, fire damage your fire damage to spells when you're going and removing fire, you're gonna have to re-put on some damage to spells for sure. So that could be like, well, actually, it wouldn't really have to be fire damage to spells or anything like that, but it would have to be a prefix, because you want to have 3 prefixes, and none of them can be crafted. So if you remove fire damage to spells alongside your fire res and fire damage, go ahead and augment some other prefix. It doesn't matter what it is. Could be like some fire mod, some cold mod, like some chaos mod, just something that you can remove later anyways. Now what you're going to do is you're going to remove your cannot roll attack modifier, and you're going to change that for cannot roll caster modifier. So when you put on your cannot roll caster modifier here, you'll see that when you go ahead and slam your Redeemer Exalt, the only thing that you can get is the cold exposure, the auras, the hatred aura effect, and the speed, the move speed. So you're going to go ahead and throw on your Redeemer Exalted Orb at it, and then depending what you get, you're either going to remove stuff and add influence, or you're going to remove add influence. It really kind of depends. So for example, if you get this cold damage exposure stuff, you can just simply remove a random cold modifier, and it's going to get rid of it, right? And then you'll want to basically augment influence modifier until you get either T1 hatred aura effect or the aura skills. Now, I would highly recommend starting with the T1 aura effect, the hatred aura effect, because if you do that, then the next time you get something that you want, which is the auras have 2% increased damage to you and allies, you're guaranteed to get it. If you start with the aura mod and then you augment hatred, there is a 50-50 that you'll actually end up hitting the bad mod here, which is not something you want to happen. So in this case, you would really want to start off with the hatred or effect mod. Now, the best way to do that, as I said, is you'll have your caster mods blocked out, and then you'll just augment a new influence modifier, which is 1 exalt every time. If you get this movement speed mod here, you can easily remove it with speed. If you get this cold mod, you can easily remove it with cold. And that's really it, because the aura mod you actually want and the hatred mod you actually want. And since you have no suffixes at that point, except for cannot roll caster modifiers, you can actually augment influence twice, because you can remove any of the influence modifiers anyways, because you can remove cold, you can remove, and you can remove speed. So that is going to act as a block, because say the first augment you hit like cold exposure, that is now 1,000 weighting that is blocked by that mod, which you can easily remove anyways. So it's going to make hitting your hatred or effect easier. Once that's done, you basically finish up the one that you're missing. So for example, you can have T1 aura effect. You could also keep the T2, like this guy kept the T2, and then force on the other one, the auras. And once you have both of these with your +1 lightning and your +1 spell, it really comes down to whatever you want to do. So at that point, you can finish it off by either putting, what I did to sell mine for 60 exalt is I put on quality of socketed gems, which is, I'm not sure if, yeah, this mod here, level, quality of socketed gems. And then for the last suffix, I put on, oh, that's actually also mine. But that's not the same one. That one has the Val skill mod. The last suffix for me was actually the cold exposure. This mod right here. Chance to deal, chance to inflict cold exposure on hit. And you can easily get that by rerolling cold. Because there's a decent amount of cold mods, like cold suffixes. There's cold resistance and there's cold damage, which has a weighting of 10,000. And there's also chance to freeze, so 11,000. And you want like basically one of these mods, so 1 in 12,000, so like 24 rerolls, 24 cold rerolls on average to get the T1 cold exposure. That being said, I don't know if I can really recommend this, because the guy who actually bought it from me said that he was actually going to remove the cold so he could put on trigger. So maybe you don't want to mess around with the cold and just put trigger instead and sell it kind of like most of these look like they have trigger. So that's probably what you want to do. I don't know why most of these have lightning damage to spells. I think it's just from doing it in the wrong method, but you're not supposed to have lightning damage to spells as your last prefix. Anyways, so that's pretty much a scepter that I made. It costs like 20x to make, honestly. Mine, I got pretty lucky. Again, I probably made it for less than 15. It was really lucky. I hit the hatred T1 on like the second or third augment, which is like only 3 exalt compared to the average of maybe 5 or 6 or something. So again, I got pretty lucky on that craft. But it sells for 60, costs 20, very, very good profit margin. That being said, they are not fast selling, and if the market gets flooded, they're going to become even slower selling, because you have to realize that these are basically only used by Orbots, especially for deep delvers, by duo Orbot and carry teams, basically. So they don't sell really quickly, but mine sold within a day, so it's not that bad. And then the last thing, I spoke about the fact that I made a Herald of Thunder staff, the +5 staff, but this was actually made not part of the challenge, actually part of my own currency tab, so we don't really have to talk about that. So going through these profit margins that I made on each of those trades is basically how we got to 200 pure exalts within, technically 4 days of making currency, technically 5 days of playing. Now, if you're wondering how many hours that really was, so 90% of this was done on stream, including both making the items and selling the items. So vast majority of it was done on stream, almost all of it actually. So if you go ahead and look at my videos, and we go to, let's see, past broadcasts, we can actually see how much actual time it took to do this. So we started. Oops, sorry about that. We started 5 days ago, and we did a stream that lasted for about 10 hours. Then we did a stream that lasted for about 9 hours. Then we did a stream that lasted for another 9 hours, followed by a stream that lasted for, let's say, 6 hours, and a stream that lasted for 4 hours. That's actually not true, because I had to delete the VODs from yesterday, or at least half the VOD from yesterday is deleted, because somebody sent a TOS picture on Discord, so I had to delete the VOD and delete the clips in order to, you know, prevent getting banned or anything like that, because some people are just dickheads, I suppose. But let's just say another 4 hours. So it took a grand total of about 40 hours to acquire about 320 exalts. So 320 exalts divided by about 40 hours is about an 8 exalt per hour average through the whole challenge, which is honestly not that bad. So that's pretty much it for the video. I've covered just about every single thing I did to make currency in the last couple of days, and how we finished up the challenge, and basically the step-by-step process to every craft, so you guys don't have to sit through my VODs. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section. And before I go, as always, I do want to say a huge thank you to my supporters: Mario, Luro, Gaikona, Kfish, Legend of A, Dr. Radu, Scott, Eric, and Casticus, as well, of course, anybody else who wishes to remain anonymous, and anybody else who has supported me in the past. And a special thank you to these beautiful people, and also to all of you guys for watching this video. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.